Z865 was the last Hurricane of 14,583 to be built. Carrying the markings of 261 Squadron, it now flies with the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight based at RAF Coningsby. Known as the last of the many, today it is piloted by Flight Lieutenant Paul Shenton.
The first thing we do when we come up to the aeroplane is to check out the basic services are there and that it's safe for us to do an external inspection of the aeroplane. We're checking there are no selections made on the hydraulic services. We need to check on the gauge that sits between our feet that we have pneumatic pressure available for the brakes. To make sure that the engine is safe, we ensure that the ignition switches are off. Again, checking all the alignments on the panel screws, exhaust stubs. Doing that, if it sounds any different, then we know we've probably got a crack in it, etc. Come forward to the propeller, general condition of all the blades, and checking there's not too much movement in it. And again, all the fasteners are in line. The second wheel, condition, creak marks, brake, doors, and the bay. Nothing wrong there. Back again to the leading edge, checking the general condition of the leading edge. Landing light, the condition's good, and the cover is fine. Starboard navigation light, condition, cover. Coming round to this side, to the aileron, just checking it's in alignment, which it was, which is why we set the other side up at neutral. And again, nothing conflicting with the movement there. Condition of the top surface of the wing, and the flaps are up. All the panels are secure, particularly this one, which is where our baggage goes, which comes on and off more than the rest of them. General condition, there's a couple of removable panels under here as well, and we're just checking that they're secure. Onto the tail wheel, again checking for creep, general condition of the tyre, oleo extension, not a problem. The tailplane is fine. Coming around to the elevator, again full free unrestricted movement and setting neutral. Coming over to the rudder, again we've got full and free movement. We've now done the external checks and we're happy with the outside of the aeroplane. We now need to set up the cockpit ready to start up. First thing we do is energise the electrical system. We check that the battery has sufficient voltage in to allow us to start. Check that the radiator flap is open, and then all the trims. First the elevator, checking for full and free movement and selecting a neutral. Then the rudder trim, full and free movement, selecting it fully right to help us counter the effects of torque on takeoff. Throttle, full and free movement, and tightening the friction nut up, which is very important because as we get airborne we need to change hands to move the undercarriage, and we don't want the throttle vibrating backwards and closing on us. Checking the RPM is full and free movement. Moving down to the fuel tanks, we're selecting the reserve tank on. We'll start up with the reserve tank on, which proves to us that the fuel is flowing from there, and post start we'll then move and select the main tanks, and we can then prove that we can get the fuel from there. Supercharger to M gear. Checking again the magnetos are off, the pressure heat is off, and the lights are selected off. Condition of the G meter, and that it's reset to 0. As we pull G as we're flying around, it'll kick up and it'll actually remember the highest setting or the highest pull of positive G and negative G that we've done throughout the sortie, so that we can monitor fatigue. The generator fail light is on. The undercarriage indications are showing 2 green, which tells me that the undercarriage is down and locked. Also we'll then change over and check the other bulbs are working. Radio selected on and on the frequency we require. We have a VHF system in here, which is not as they had in the Second World War. It's much smaller, more compact, and really more efficient. We'll check the overall condition of the flight instruments, the airspeed indicator, the artificial horizon, the vertical speed indicator, altimeter, the direction gyro, which we align with the magnetic compass, and the turn and slip. Overload tank lights, we check they're both operating. This is the only indication we get of the fuel state in the overload tanks, and really gives us a warning that the fuel's about to run out and we need to do something about it and just go back to the main selection. Engine instruments, the boost gauge, oil pressure indicator, oil temperature, and the radiator temperature. Also check the fuel pressure light is on. This indicates to us that it's a very low fuel pressure. Obviously at the moment, without the engine running, we would expect that. However, if that came on in flight, then something is probably seriously wrong. We then interrogate the fuel tanks and get readings for both the port main, the centre or the reserve tank, and then the starboard main tank. Checking the kite gas primers in, moving the hydraulic selector to flaps down position, hand pump, pumping the flaps down to 30 degrees, so and then reselecting the flaps up. So when we start the engine, the hydraulic pump should power up and automatically bring the flaps up, which proves to us the hydraulic pump is working. Overload tank selected off. Moving round, selecting the brakes and the parking brakes on. And now ready to prime the engine to start up. Once you're airborne and flying around, the things that struck me, when you compare it to a jet airplane, the controls are a lot heavier. You have to coordinate rudder with the aileron more than you would, if at all, in a jet fighter. In fact, in the jet, you tend to just use the rudder pedals for steering yourself on the ground and the footrests in the air. This airplane, with the secondary effects of roll, being yaw of the aeroplane, you need to work the rudder at the same time as the aileron and elevators. It's very, very noisy. In a tornado, you could actually talk to each other in the air without the intercom. You can shout. In this aeroplane, display power settings, you're doing your damnedest to actually hear the radio. So the first thing you'll notice is the immense amount of torque effect of this aeroplane. With over 1,000 horsepower, you would expect it. So you're fighting that off with lots of rudder, making your feet work, which I'm not really too used to with the Tornado, and most jet aeroplanes are fairly stable on the ground and pretty much go fairly straight. So we're fighting that. We then need to lift the tail wheel by pushing the control column forward. So we lift the tail wheel to get the aircraft in a level attitude. Again, if you're used to a tricycle undercarriage, like in your Cessna 172, it'll be different, and you'll be pulling back to get the nose wheel off just before you get airborne. Get to climbing speed, and this airplane you need to quite a positive check to get her airborne. You're up in the air, and the overall feel of the airplane is lovely. When you get chance to look out, look in the mirror, look at the tailplane, look out at the wings and everything else, and just take in the whole atmosphere of it and the feeling of flying the airplane, she's very nice.